let's get further analysis. I'm joined by Haitam Faraj. He's a lawyer and retired Marine Corps officer. How worried should we be about this staunchly pro-Israeli US team just pushing ahead with a plan for Gaza and potentially the rest of the occupied territories that sidelines or even exiles Palestinians from their own lands and ignores things like history and self-determination?
You know that I'm living in Beirut currently, and this is the question that is on everyone's minds. But I constantly remind people that nothing has changed. This is simply an administration that is articulating, honestly, the policy of the United States. I mean, how do you explain Biden and Kamala Harris and the Blinken team policy of supplying every type of weapon, every type of aircraft, all types of intelligence to destroy Gaza in the worst type of war crimes in modern times, and reconcile that with this idea that we want the Gazans out of Gaza? I mean, that's what they were trying to do anyway. They just didn't want to articulate it because that would indicate that they're supporting ethnic cleansing. As we've come to expect from Donald Trump, he's just honest about it. He is willing to say what Harris and Biden and Blinken would not say, but what they very effectively did, and that is try to make Gaza uninhabitable. What you have today with Rubio is a child in diplomacy. This guy is a second-rate diplomat. He has no experience. He doesn't understand geo-global politics. What he has is he's armed with the messianic view of what Israel ought to be in Christianity. And so he's coming in saying, we want the Gazans out and we want to give the land to the Israelis based on biblical prophecy. In the end, after nearly 16 months of genocide, after 16 months of murder and destruction, and the worst type of war crimes against humanity, the Gazans held steadfast, and so did the Palestinians. Look, no one is going to remove these people. They couldn't remove it with force. They're not going to remove them with diplomacy.
I suppose some people might say that sometimes you're comparing Marco Rubio to a child there. Sometimes we're surprised at how often children get their way. I suppose what then, given what you've said, they won't be removed by diplomacy, what then should Palestinian leadership and Arab leadership be doing? We've heard they're putting together a plan. Do we know any more about that plan?
Well, it's come to bite them. You know, Arab leadership failed to demonstrate any leadership in the war on Gaza. We heard nothing from them. We heard that humanitarian aid should pass, but we didn't hear much else. And today, Donald Trump is looking to push the Palestinians onto the Jordanians and the Egyptians, maybe the Syrians, and perhaps the Saudis, perhaps the Lebanese. And so for the first time in a long time, you have some unified Arab voices to say, no, we're not going to accept that. Not for the love of Palestinians, but it's because they're afraid of their own stability, of their own governmental stability. And so I think you're going to have some unified voices in the Arab world to say, no, you can't do that. But let me correct something. I didn't mean that Rubio is a child. I mean, Rubio is a child when it comes to Middle East politics and geopolitical, the geopolitical scene. He is not a traditional diplomat. He doesn't understand the region. He is a guy who got to where he is in politics by being hardcore right-wing, which works in some parts of Florida, and that's about it. I mean, let's size him up for what he is. He's a backcountry diplomat that appeals to a few hardline voices in Florida, and Trump has given him a larger voice by making him Secretary of State, and that's all it is.
Yeah, I think you're right. You know, when you said we haven't seen that much in terms of Arab leadership and planning specifically. If you were putting together this plan that apparently is being worked on, what would you put in there that might be able to force the US and Israel's hand into backing down? What kind of things would be hard lines to stop them from simply going ahead with this Riviera project, for example?
Look, finally, you have the Saudis coming in with some leadership to say, absolutely not, two-state solution. You have other meaningful regional powers, including Turkey, with some gravitas who say two-state solution. The Egyptians want a two-state solution, but they have no cards to play. They've given them all up. So what you really have is Turkey, Saudi Arabia, maybe to a certain extent Qatar, but Qatar is not doesn't have the gravitas of those two larger countries, and they're going to say to the United States, look, you can't do what you want to do. The only solution going forward is a two-state solution. You're not going to be able to kick out the Palestinians. I think that's the only way to pressure the U.S. and Donald Trump into backing up. We have learned what Donald Trump does. He thinks everything he does in politics is like the real estate deals. You come in aggressively, you demand a very low price. You say, I'll buy this for a lot less than it's being offered, and you hope to compromise somewhere in the middle. Exactly what he did with Mexico and Canada a couple of weeks ago. He's going to try to do that in China. He's working to do that in Ukraine. And so that's his style. And I think sophisticated diplomats in the Arab world certainly understand that. But they don't have many cards. Jordan and Egypt don't have cards to play. They are dependent on the U.S. Saudi Arabia is not. I think Turkey, to a certain extent, can have some influence. And I think that's where that is the leadership we look to in order to derail this Trump plan to kick the Palestinians out. But that's an idea. In the end, you have to discuss, how do you do it on the ground? What do you do with nearly 2 million people? They didn't leave when they were being bombed, killed, starved, diseased. Do you really think that they're just going to give up and leave? Unless you commit a different type of genocide, which is you surround them again and try to kill them through disease and famine. And the world is watching.
All right, Hatem Faraj, thank you so much for joining us from Beirut. Much appreciated.
Thank you for having me.